Well, with me now is ANC veteran and former Robben Island prisoner Tokyo Sexwale, who's just going to take us through some of the what used to happen when they were back in prison. When on this day, people like former leaders of the ANC in exile, Oliver Tambo, who would issue directives to the people who were in prison, to the country, to the entire world about what the ANC's priorities would be in any particular year. Mr. Sexwale, thanks very much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having us, and thanks for mentioning Oliver Tambo, who has been a stalwart and was the centerpiece of our struggle, as well as the ANC, throughout the many difficult years in exile and underground and prison.
Now, in those years, when you were in Robben Island, together with other ANC leaders, President Jacob Zuma was there, former Deputy President Kgalema Motlanthe was there, Nelson Mandela, so many leaders of the ANC. Tell us, when you looked forward to January 8, Oliver Tambo is in exile, and you are waiting to hear directives from him as to what the priorities would be for that particular year. What would go through your mind? What would you be talking about in prison?
The birthday of the ANC is always a celebratory event. Now that we are 103, that has not changed. It makes us even more resolute. Secondly is that over the years, in prison, in exile, in underground, must mention all those three areas, January the 8th, which is the day, as you said, when Oliver Tambo, and I'm happy that the writing and his picture is on the wall, every one of those years in underground and were in prison, in exile, when he comes to speak on January the 8th, it's a policy speech. It's a very, very, very serious occasion. In prison, Nelson Mandela sits down, Jacob Zuma, today the president. We all sit down to try and find that speech. Everything will be done to make sure that we smuggle that speech into prison, or pieces of it. Any part that we can quote to keep ourselves alive. Because it was called Umkombandlela. That speech of January 8th by Oliver Tambo shows the way. It tells us what has to be covered for that year. For example, he could be announcing the intensification of the armed struggle. He could be announcing the involvement and galvanization of the youth. He could be announcing the role of women. He could be making announcements about the role of the international community, because sanctions were applied and so on. Therefore, it was a very powerful moment, but also it was heartwarming to know that we don't have a government, we don't have power, but we did have the masses behind us who celebrated this day each and every time. I think I want to emphasize for this interview and for people who are listening, what can they take away from what we are saying today? The celebration this time round, and Oliver Tambo will deal with these matters, of the Freedom Charter. It is exactly 60 years old. Around my age, I wouldn't tell you my age, around my age. The Freedom Charter is the symbol of our movement right now. Government ministers, the ANC itself, activists throughout, that is what at that time, when Oliver Tambo stands up, he would emphasize one thing or the other in the Freedom Charter. It is a very powerful document. It is not easy to implement because it is going to require the total resources of the country to turn the lives of the people around. So that is something that we celebrated all the time. January 8th linked to the Freedom Charter.
Now, I mean, you've served in several capacities, in government, as a premier at one time, as a minister at a different time. And I'm assuming that you'll be a little less guarded in talking about how seriously ANC leaders took and continue to take January 8 post 1994.
No, I can't be less guarded. as ANC. We are a critical organization. We criticize ourselves. That's why there's this thing of criticism and self-criticism. I think what we want to say at this time is that we have to pay attention to service delivery, to delivery. You know, people must continue to trust us. That is why the President, Jacob Zuma, is all around the Western Cape right now. I'm unhappy with him because he was in Franschhoek, where we have a farm. And he didn't tell me that he's going there. I was hoping to catch him there yesterday. But in any case, we're all over the place doing door-to-door. This you can consider as my own door-to-door, knocking at the doors of various people to say, there is a message. And the message that we are giving on behalf of the ANC in the footsteps of the President is that of commitment to serving the people. That is what should drive us all the time until our last day. Service to the people.
But do you veterans do that? Because I'm sure the assumption that a lot of people make is that once you are out of office, you're no longer in office, then you simply don't care.
No. There is a time of being in the office in the ANC, and there's a time of not holding an office. Yes, Nelson Mandela ended up without holding an office. One day Jacob Zuma is not going to hold an office and we sit him, but it doesn't mean he's going to sit back. We will drive him all the time, just as we are driving the Thabo Mbekis of the world that the people require you. Service is not only inside South Africa. Yes, Thabo Mbeki conducting service in a faraway African country because, which is Sudan, because we need, in line with the Freedom Charter, also peace to do certain things on the continent as well as in our country. Therefore, service to the people must continue to be something that is uppermost to us. Ministers are there to guard jealously how the budget is used. I was one of them, and I understand. I was the premier, and I have an understanding. Our job is to make sure that the people can continue to trust us. I still have my faith in the ANC. And I hope that the people, particularly of Western Cape, will understand that the ANC is there to lead. Judge us, take us seriously, take us with our mistakes, but understand that constantly the ANC is always trying to renew itself. It doesn't, it's not a question of we don't have problems. We do have problems of the ANC, problems of dealing with the country, but the focus should be all the time to struggle to rectify our shortcomings and remain consciously serving the people.
Mr. Sexwale, I'm afraid that's where we're going to leave it. We have run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Well, ANC veteran, former Robben Island prisoner, former cabinet minister, former premier of Gauteng, Tokyo Sexwale. It's the ANC's birthday, and we're talking to several leaders of the party to tell us what's in store this year. Should we expect radically new ideas when the president of the ANC, Jacob Zuma, speaks here in about 5-6 hours' time? Should we expect radically new ideas when he unveils that all-important statement on Saturday at the rally that is going to be held at the Cape Stadium on Saturday? So stay with us for more.